Zane Clodfelter with OttersTV here with Jenifer Langosch of MLB.com. And the reason why Jenifer is joining us here on this OttersTV segment is her brother-in-law is Bobby Siegel, the Otters hitting coach. So Jenifer, I know you're always busy covering the MLB level of baseball, but how often do you get a chance to sit down and watch an Otters game?
Yeah, watch is probably occasionally. Follow definitely a lot more. For many years while Bobby was there, I was covering Major League games every night, so kind of hard to tune in. But certainly followed the Frontier League, followed what the Otters have been able to do. Here in St. Louis where I live, there have been 2 Frontier League teams. Now there's just one in the Gateway area. So typically I try to catch the Otters when they come to Gateway or when they came in the past to River City. But certainly I've always appreciated what the Frontier League does and independent leagues in general. And it's been fun in my career to even cover some players who have come up through independent ball and know kind of what those guys have gone through to get back to the major leagues. But certainly consider myself an Otters fan here in St. Louis.
Yeah, and you mentioned the independent players. I feel like more and more you're seeing more independent guys from not only the Frontier League, but the American Association, the Atlantic League, making the show. Do you see that trend continuing?
Yeah, a little bit, and some, making a big impact on their teams. I think of one here in St. Louis that I cover, John Brebbia, who became a really big part of the Cardinals bullpen, will continue to be when he recovers from surgery that he had this year. But yeah, these are players who, for whatever reason, maybe didn't get opportunities in affiliated ball or were released after opportunities they did get. But to see them kind of, again, go through the path of the independent leagues, it's a tough grind. I realize, those bus grind of the summer can get to a lot of folks, but it's just neat to see kind of dreams rewarded in that way. And yeah, there's scouts for all these major league teams that are paying very close attention to what happens in independent ball. And quite frankly, I think that's only going to increase if we see a reduction on the minor league side. If fewer minor league teams, I think will make independent ball that much more important and make it a pipeline for a lot of major league teams.
And that'd be really good, I guess, for your brother-in-law to find some more batters, right, for the Otters offense.
That's right. The bigger the pool, the better for Bobby.
Right, absolutely. And we're all for that, by the way. Now, the interesting thing, you've worked in baseball for so long. How did you get your start and how did you get your foot in that door to begin to climb that ladder?
Yeah, so, I'm one of the weird people that in second grade knew I wanted to write about baseball. So it's always been a career goal of mine. I actually grew up in Atlanta during the 1990s, so it was kind of hard not to be a baseball fan with what the Braves were doing at the time. And, now I look back and realize was as a kid. Went to the University of Missouri to study journalism with an emphasis in sports and got a great opportunity to intern with MLB.com in between my junior and senior years, actually covering the Braves down in Atlanta. So that was kind of like at the age of 2021, dream come true. And then was able to land a job with MLB.com after graduating from Mizzou, covered the Pirates as their beat writer for 5 years. Then made the transition to the Cardinals, covered the Cardinals for about 8 years before moving into my role where I oversee content through kind of a managing and editing side. So I've been with MLB my entire professional career, certainly look forward to where I'm able to go with this company. But baseball's been my passion as well as writing and kind of creating and generating content. And it's been fun in my career to see how that's changed, even just in the last 13, 14 years. But certainly the love of the game has never gone away.
What do you like more? Did you like actually writing, or do you like being the person to give the ideas and then help generate that content?
I'm probably now shifting toward the latter. I'd always consider myself a writer, and one of the things that I loved about covering baseball, it's certainly a grind, and to cover close to 162 games a year can be really tough. But for me, getting to go to the ballpark every day, not knowing if I'm going to see something I've never seen before, not knowing if I'm going to witness history, and being the person tasked with documenting that, right, for fans and giving them a behind-the-scenes look to things that they can't see on TV or maybe that they don't know, I took a lot of pride in that. So, I'd say still have, my hand on in the writing side a lot, but it's really interesting now to kind of delve into the why we generate the content that we do instead of just kind of, churning it out day after day.
So you mentioned that you covered games in Pittsburgh. You covered the Pirates for, 5 years and then the Cardinals. What were some of the things that really stood out about your time in Pittsburgh? I know everybody loves to talk about PNC and how beautiful of a park it is. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, it's, I probably come with a biased opinion, certainly,
Right.
but it's one of the most beautiful parks in America, I think. I was there from 2007 through 2011, and for those who know their Pirates history,
Yeah.
those were not good years to be a Pittsburgh Pirates baseball fan. Interesting because I was there while the Steelers won a Super Bowl and while the Penguins won a Stanley Cup, and the Pirates were consistently losing 100 plus games a year. So it was a very challenging experience in that regard. I was young, I was kind of fresh out of college. I wasn't from Pittsburgh, so I didn't have kind of an institutional knowledge of the organization, but it was interesting to come in at a time when there was a lot of rebuilding and a lot of transition. I covered in 5 years 3 different managers, 2 different owners, 2 different general managers, and the entire 40-man roster turned over during my tenure. So there were certainly challenges that came with that. It gave you an appreciation when I came to St. Louis with what the Cardinals had built here. But certainly, I appreciated my time in Pittsburgh. I loved working in that city. It is a wonderful and probably underrated sports town, even, on the Pirate side of things. And it was neat to see them improve, upon my departure. They got a little bit better before, a little bit of a downturn here recently. But loved covering baseball there.
And it had to be cool for you because then you take the job covering the Cardinals, and then guess who the Cardinals play in 2013 in the NLDS? They play Pittsburgh.
Yeah, and it was awesome to be able to get to go cover that playoff game, especially in Pittsburgh, right? I had sat through so many, quite frankly, meaningless games there. So many games where there were maybe 8,000-9,000 people in the stands and just no interest in the city. And you always knew that it was there, like ready to bubble up, that the interest was there. So to get to go back to Pittsburgh, to see the enthusiasm and the energy in that city for their baseball team was awesome. Now, of course, again, for those who know their baseball history, the Cardinals ended up knocking out the Pirates. But it was a big year for that organization. They had a couple great years after that as well. And, again, I still believe that when that team is good, they will be supported as well as any team anywhere.
Right. And then earlier you mentioned the grind, and your husband, Matt, knows about the grind of a baseball season. Your brother-in-law, Bobby, knows about the grind. You know about the grind. For people who don't know the grind, it's not just confined to those on the field or in the dugout. It's those working every day like you, like me, everybody else. So how do you kind of deal with, I guess, some of those periods of a season where you're mentally exhausted but know that you have to keep doing your job to get that content and get all that other stuff out there?
Yeah, it's a challenge when you're on the beat and you're kind of boots on the ground every day. And as you mentioned, there are plenty of folks I think that still think that I show up for a game at 7:00 at night and I go home at 10:15, and that's not the nature of the job, right? You're at the park at 2 in the afternoon and you hope to maybe get out there before midnight. So the days are long. You add in major league travel, just the cross country travel, the length of the season. I mentioned the 162 games, but that doesn't even take into account the 7 weeks I would spend in spring training, followed by, the month on the road for the postseason. Oftentimes, even if it wasn't the team I covered, I would step in and help with some of our other reporters. And then you have the off season, which is anything but off, right? With the Anderson hot stove season and winter meetings and all that. It's really not only a 12-month-a-year job, but a 24/7 type job with the way that everybody is connected these days. So yeah, it's very easy, I think, to hit burnout. For me, I'm fortunate that we were given days off along the way. And one of my pieces of advice to people in the business is when you have a day off, take the day off. I learned, early on in my career, I'd have a day off, but I'd sit down and watch the Pirates game. That's probably not good for my mental health. So trying to find other interests away from baseball, trying to find friends that could care less about baseball was always very healthy for me because I could get away from those conversations. But you have to love it, certainly. And I tell a lot of people that, talk about how much they love sports and want to work in sports. You have to love the job too, right? If I didn't love the writing, the sports would only sustain me for so long. You can always be a sports fan, but I loved the craft. I love the idea of interviewing folks and getting to tell stories. And as I mentioned, getting to show up at a ballpark as the person who gets to document something that maybe you'll never seen before or will never see again. So for me, that certainly kept it fresh. But I also will acknowledge that after 13 years of being on the road for 120 days a year and all this, it's been a little bit refreshing to kind of tone it down and work a little bit more stable of a lifestyle now.
Right. And I know you covered, 2 National League teams, but with interleague and everything, I assume you've been to every Major League Baseball ballpark, correct?
I have. Obviously with the Rangers opening a new one, though there have been no fans there, that would be on my list that I haven't. But I have been to all the current other parks, as well as several that are no longer in use.
So what of the ones no longer in use of that group would be your favorite that you still wish was around? And then currently, what is just your overall favorite?
The easiest answer would be the overall favorite, which is probably San Francisco,
Okay.
With PNC up there really, really close. And I mentioned San Francisco for a couple of reasons. I mean, number one, just the aesthetic of the ballpark on the water. It's a beautiful place. It's almost always full of a lot of energy, especially those years that the Giants were going to the World Series every other year. But also selfishly, from the media standpoint, lowest press box in baseball. So it's a place where you can go and you can actually see spin on pitches and that sort of things, and you don't feel like you're up in the clouds. So San Francisco, probably my favorite. For personal reasons, probably the park that I miss the most would be the one down in Atlanta, Turner Field, just because that's where I grew up. At some point, I grew up going to Atlanta Fulton County Stadium, then it became Turner Field, and then I got to work there as an intern, so that was a very special place for me, and it feels like it kind of ages me, right, that the Braves have had 3 ballparks in my life. I don't consider myself that old, but that was certainly a ballpark that had a lot of sentimental meaning to me and to my family.
Is it weird to you that Turner Field is now a college football stadium?
Yeah, and of course it was before it became... It was an Olympic venue, so I actually went there for the first time during the '96 Olympics. So I'm glad that they didn't just tear it down, because 20 years seems like a very short lifespan for any stadium. So hopefully it serves Georgia State really well.
Well, Jenifer, we really appreciate you spending the time to chat with us here for our final virtual broadcast, and obviously send our best to your husband Matt and the whole family, and hopefully we'll see you at an Otters game in 2021.
Yeah, I look forward to getting back out to Bosse Field and watching some Frontier League next year. Certainly. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, she's Jenifer Langosch of MLB.com. I'm Zane Clodfelter. This has been Otters TV.